You have started over more times than you can count. January 1st, Monday morning, the day after a bad week, you tell yourself this time is different. This time you have the plan, the motivation, the clarity, and for a while it works. Then, without warning, without drama, without even a conscious decision, you stop. The routine disappears. The habit dies quietly in the night. And the worst part is not the failure itself. It is the story you begin to tell yourself about why you always fail. But what if the problem was never your willpower? What if everything you were tough about building a habit was simply wrong? By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why your habits collapse, and more importantly, you will have the tools to build a routine so deeply embedded in your brain that quitting becomes harder than continuing. The real struggle underneath this problem is not laziness, it is identity. Every time you abandon a habit, a small voice inside you whispers, "This is just who you are. You are someone who starts things and doesn't finish them." That voice is not the truth, but it begins to feel like truth after the third relapse, the fifth restart, the 10th version of the same promise. The emotional wound here is not about productivity. It is about self-trust. When you cannot keep a promise to yourself, you stop believing in yourself at the deepest level. That is the real cause of a broken habit, and that is exactly what we are going to fix in this video. Science has known for decades that habits are not acts of will. They are loops of neurology that in the 1990s, researchers at MIT discovered something that changed everything we thought we knew about human behavior. They were studying rats running through mazes, and they noticed that as a rat repeated the same path over and over, the brain activity required to complete the task dropped dramatically. The brain wasn't getting lazier, it was getting smarter. It was automating the behavior, removing the need of conscious thought. This is the habit loop, a cue, a routine, and a reward. 3 steps that together carve a groove so deep into your neural architecture that the behavior becomes almost involuntary. But here's what most people never learn about this loop, and it is the detail that changes everything. The reward is not what you think it is. Most people assume that the reward is the outcome. The clean house, the finished workout, the saved money, but the brain doesn't respond to outcomes, it responds to anticipation. The reward that locks a habit into place is the craving that fires before the behavior even begins. This is why people who successfully build lasting habits do not rely on motivation. They engineer desire. They design their environment so that the cue triggers a craving so specific, so immediate, so physical that the behavior follows almost automatically. The question now is, how do you actually build that craving? The answer is buried in a concept most self-help books get completely backwards. Identity precedes behavior, not the other way around. You do not build a habit and then become a different person. You decide who you are first, and then the habits follow naturally from that identity. A person who says, "I am trying to exercise," will always struggle. A person who says, "I am someone who moves their body every day," experiences a completely different relationship with the same action. One is effort, the other is expression. This is not motivational language, this is cognitive science. When a behavior aligns with your self-concept, your brain stops treating it as a task and starts treating it as a reflection of who you are. Breaking it feels wrong, continuing feels right. And something else happens at this level of identity that most people never experience, something that makes consistency almost effortless. But before we get there, you need to understand why most habit systems fail at the design stage. The number one mistake is not inconsistency, it is ambition. Neuroscience calls this the intention-action gap, the space between what we plan and what we do. The larger the habit you try to build, the wider that gap becomes. The brain perceives large behavioral changes as threats to its equilibrium and responds with resistance. This is not a character flaw, this is biology protecting itself. The solution is not more discipline, it is a smaller architecture. You are not building a habit, you are building a signal, a 2-minute version of the behavior that is so small, so non-threatening that the brain accepts it without resistance. And once that signal is firing consistently, you add slowly, systematically, until the full behavior is in place and the brain has adapted without ever triggering its defense system. Which brings us to the single most powerful tool in all of the behavioral psychology, and it is something you already do every single day without noting it. You already have habits. You already have deeply grooved neural pathways firing automatically every morning, every evening, every time you sit at your desk or walk through a specific door. The most efficient way to build a new habit is not to create a new loop from scratch. It is to attach the new behavior to an existing one. This technique is called habit stacking, and it works because the existing habit already has a cue, already has neural momentum, already fires without effort, and when you place a new behavior immediately after an established one, it borrows the momentum. The brain links them. Over time, the new behavior begins to feel as automatic as the old one. This is not a trick, this is architecture. And when you combine habit stacking with identity-based thinking and strategy environment design, something remarkable begins to happen. You stop feeling like you are trying. The behavior begins to feel like gravity. Not something you have to generate, but something you simply fall into. People who have successfully rewired their behavior at this level describe it the same way. It becomes easier to do it than not to do it. That is the tipping point. That is where the habit becomes permanent, and it is not reserved for exceptional people. It is available to anyone who understands the mechanisms and applies them with patience. Here's what you know that most people never will. Habits fail because they are built on willpower, which is finite, instead of identity, which is stable. They fail because they are designed too large for the brain to accept without resistance. They fail because their reward is placed at the end instead of being engineered into the anticipation. And they fail because people try to build new loops instead of attaching the existing ones. You now have the science, you have the structure, you have the strategy. The only question left is the one we open with. Not whether you can build habits that last, but whether you are finally ready to stop rebuilding the same ones from scratch. The loop is closed. The answer was never about trying harder. It was always about understanding how the brain actually works and designing your life around that truth.